Welcome to Inside the Studio, KFIZ at 100. Conversations with some of the station's biggest and brightest all-time personalities. I'm your host, Sean Kaiser. This episode features former news director and sports announcer Greg Stensland. Growing up a West Coast kid in Oregon, Greg fell in love with sports at an early age and decided someday he wanted to become a play-by-play announcer. He achieved that dream with his first radio gig in Laramie, Wyoming.
That was a lot of fun. It was a learning experience. I was awful when I first started.
Greg recalls racking up a lot of miles on the road back then to cover games in Big Sky Country.
A long trip in Fond du Lac is traveling to Green Bay or traveling to Madison. So in Laramie, a conference game was in Sheridan, Wyoming. That's 250 miles away. I'd leave after my 8 o'clock news in the morning, drive up to Sheridan, Wyoming. They'd put me up at a motel overnight, and I'd be gone the entire weekend for 2 games.
From there, Greg would work at a station in Minnesota before coming to KFIZ in March of 1987. And the technology back then was much different than it is today.
Every day I'd walk into the radio station at 5:30 in the morning, and we still had the UPI teletype machine. We still had the reel-to-reel machines and the cart machines. The internet didn't exist back then. We didn't have cell phones. Honestly, I think I was one of the first people in Fond du Lac to have a cell phone in my car.
One of the biggest stories Greg remembers covering during his time at KFIZ, a major flood which hit just a few years after he came to town.
I remember city officials, the public works director, describing it as a 100-year flood. This is something we're never going to see again in our lifetime. And they described it as a 100-year flood. And we, of course, know now those flooding events happen almost, it seems like, every other year.
Along with his duties in the newsroom, Greg teamed up with Tom Biolo to call high school sports action.
Both of us liked doing play-by-play. Tom was better at color commentary than me, was an outstanding athlete in high school and in college. He knew sports. I enjoyed sports. We both got better at play-by-play as the years went by. We enjoyed each other's company. It was just a lot of fun.
Over the years, Greg and Tom called a lot of great games for a lot of great area teams.
I think Corey Raymer was the first player we covered that ended up going on to the NFL. The year where the Harmson brothers were playing basketball, Adam Zakis, they were the best team in the state that year, and Josh Harmson had that unfortunate injury to his ankle. They had some bad breaks in the state tournament. And then the Deaners came along and Fond du Lac dominated again in high school basketball.
In 1996, Greg and Tom left the station to pursue another local radio opportunity. 26 years later, Greg Stensland still smiles as he thinks about the time he spent at KFIZ.
I have fond memories of when I worked at KFIZ, and I'm honored that I was part of KFIZ for that decade that I spent there.
Thanks for joining us, and keep listening for more episodes of Inside the Studio, KFIZ at 100.